In one of the Facebook groups that I belong to, called Affinity Photo, someone called GWiz asked about watermarks and whether they could be done in Affinity Photo. We started a bit of a discussion about whether a watermark was a really big sort of logo that goes over the top of the picture so nobody can sort of copy it, or whether they just wanted a signature down the bottom or something like that. And then also there was a discussion about making them into intensity brushes, or even using a program outside of Affinity Photo that could do watermarks. At which point I said about you could make a macro to do this for you, in which GWiz said that he didn't know what a macro was, and he's only just sort of got the program. He doesn't really know too much about editing, sort of thing. So he then later on went to say that someone had shown him how to put a logo onto an individual picture, but he wanted to be able to do a batch of pictures. So which again, this is where a macro can come into play. So there's all various sort of suggestions and what have you, and so but I thought I'd show you a way of doing this using a macro. So I'll come back to Affinity Photo, and basically for those who don't know what a macro is, it is a recorded set of steps that you can make, and then once you've made this macro and you've recorded it and saved it, you can just click on it any time and it will repeat the process time after time, so you don't have to keep going through the whole process every time. It's mainly used to add special features like sepia or toning or what have you, but you can use it to do other things like adding a watermark. Now by default you can't see the macros library or the macro making procedure. You need to make it visible, and to do that you need to come up to the Views menu, down to Studio, and then down to the option that says Macro, which will open up this is the panel where you record your macros, but you will also need the library, which is where once recorded you can save your macros. And again you've got to come to the View menu, Studio, and down to Library. So you now have the two tabs within this same panel. Now this should all work the same on the PC version, which is what I'm using, and the Mac version of Affinity Photo. I really have no idea about how the iPad version of Affinity Photo works. I'm guessing you have an ability to make macros and what have you on the iPad, but I really don't know for sure. Let me just bring this back into the center here. Right, in the library panel, I think by default you have, I think it's about 6. I think it's this first tone mapping that it comes with the program. By default it has these tone mapping. All these other macros which I have installed here, ones that I've installed myself or made myself, so your list would not be as long as this. So what you will need to do is to sort of make yourself a new category for your macro that we're about to make. So up here they've got this little sort of lined icon. If you click on that and then click on Create New Category. Now because my list is quite long, the new category has been made right down the bottom. But if you've never made a macro before, your new list will probably start up here somewhere. So all you need to do then is come to your new category. You can leave it called macros, or again if you click on this icon here you can rename it and I'm just going to call this Watermark macros and click OK. So later on, when we have made a macro, which we do from that panel, I can save it into that category so it can be used all the time. So going on to making the actual macro itself. Now every camera will have a sort of default size for their images. So assuming this was my default size for my camera, which if you're on the view tool up here, it will tell you along the top here what the size is. It says 4904 by 3360, which technically for me is an actual cropped image, but I'm going to assume that this is the camera size that I would get by default. And so I'm going to make a new file in that size. So file new, and I have it already set up here in that size, and I'm going to have it set for a DPI of 300. You could probably make it in less, but I'm going to make it for 300. And what I'm next going to do is I'm going to add a new layer to that, and I'm going to flood fill this with a color. Now technically you don't necessarily have to do this, but as I'm going to be making sort of white wording, I need to be able to see it. So I'm going to use a color. I just picked a random orange color, it doesn't really matter what color. I've not made it black because there's a bit of this process I'm going to show you that is going to be in black, so again I wouldn't be able to see it, so I'm using this orange color. So let's come off of that tool for a second. So I'm going to be using the artistic text to create this logo. The first bit I'm going to do, not so much logo but watermark, is do a big watermark over the center of the image. So basically it would ruin the image really, which is I'm guessing what a watermark would do rather than a signature. Signatures are normally sort of just in a corner somewhere. If you want the watermark to sort of really destroy the image in a sense that nobody can copy it or clone out your watermark, this is what I would do. Other people may do it other ways. Now the first thing I want to do really is to have the copyright symbol. Now unless you know off the top of your head what the Unicode for a copyright symbol is for every typeface, the easiest way to do this is via the Glyph library, or I think that's what it's called. You can come from the text menu, Glyph Browser. You can come down to Show Glyph Browser, or you can come again to the View menu, Studio, Glyph Browser, and then just wait a little while and it will open up the Glyph Browser. Let me just recenter this and press Ctrl and 0 to center it. Now with the Glyph Browser you've got all the fonts on there. You can pick whichever font you want, and in this section here it will display all the possible letters and icons that you can get with that font. Now Arial font, which is the one I'm going to use, has hundreds if not thousands of various icons, whereas some that you may download may only have a few. So basically you just need to find the copyright symbol, which in Arial is that one there. That's Glyph 139, And all I need to do is to be on the artistic text tool, and if I double click on this, and actually what I should do is open up a bit of text and then double click, and it will insert that symbol into my document. Now technically I don't need this anymore, the Glyph Browser, because I only want it for the copyright symbol, so I can close it. Now I have found bizarrely that although you can, from the text menu, although you can open the Glyph Browser from the text menu, it won't shut from the Glyph text menu. You have to go back to Studio and turn it off that way. So what I want is this text to be white, so let me just highlight that and change the color up to white. So let me just resize this now, getting this all on. Use the move tool. Right, so I mean, if that was over the top of my picture, that would obscure most of the picture, and it'd be very hard to sort of Photoshop it out, which is what I'm guessing GWiz wanted by the sense of a watermark. Now, if he wanted a logo or just his name, signature, another way you could do that would be to, we have one here. Here's one I made earlier, as I used to say. Now this is a PNG I made a long time ago, which is black on white, but I can easily just duplicate that and then invert it to make it white on black, and then I can copy that layer and then paste it into this sample one I'm making up here, move it to where I'd want it on a picture, which would be sort of probably in the corner, something like that, and then just change the blending mode of that to screen. So I'd have my white logo on the background. You could also keep the black version if you wanted. The other version, if I right click that, copy this, come back to my sample one and then edit and paste, and so I'm going to put this one in the other corner. Now the blending mode you want for this, so we keep the black, is multiply. So you can either have the black version or the white version, doesn't really matter which. And then, so that is basically the sort of setup for different types of watermarks, whether it be a big thing like this, or a small logo, or a signature that you have ready made. Now, why I've done this on a separate document is that although you can record many things with a macro, one thing you can't record is the typing of text, but it will record pasting in something. So if I come back to my sample image here, all I need to do is, while on this, you got up here, you got the, in the macro panel, you got the start recording, stop recording, play, and then other icons, which I will come to in a minute. So what I would do is I would just click on start recording. I'll come back to this layer here, this image here, and I'm going to click on the copyright layer, right click that, copy, come back to this image here, and then edit and paste. And as you can see, paste has now been added to the macro list. Alright, so if I come back to this image here, I will click on the next part of this, and I will right click that, copy, come back to this one, and then edit, paste. So now I have two paste items in the macro we are recording. Now come to the final one here, copy that, come back to this one, and then edit, paste. So I now have the three items there pasted into my macro, and so that is, they are all there ready for you to use, sort of thing. You can pick whichever one you want, but so now I have these three items pasted in. I'm now just going to press stop recording. So that is not recording now anymore. Now moving on to these items here on the right here. That one would reset everything. If you make a mistake, you can reset that one. Now this is the one that we want, which is add to library. So if I click on add to library, it'll open up this new Affinity Photos panel here. First of all, you've got to find the category you want to save it into. So mine would be, I call mine Watermark macros, and then give that macro a name. So I'm going to call this free watermarks, and then click OK. So if I come back to this, will automatically swap back to the library, and in my watermarks macro category I made, I now have this three watermarks macro. Now before I go ahead and demonstrate this, let me just also say that these last two icons here is you can export the macro, or save it to your hard drive and share it with other people, or the import one where if you can download others to add to your library. So that can be done from there. Or if you're on a certain category like this, you can export the whole category via this menu, and you can import categories from the menu at the top. So that is a way of sharing and getting new macros. So I can close this down now, and I can also close down this one as I don't need it, and I can close down this as I don't need it. So this is a picture that I want to use the macro on. Now this is the actual default size, I think, for my camera, which is 5208 by 3203. But I just want to use this as a demonstration of, even if you end up with a different size image to what you've made your macro, you can always move them around. So if I come back to, if I just click on this now, it will automatically add all those 3 different copyright messages. I mean, obviously you wouldn't want all 3 of them, but whichever one you want to use, you can just turn the others off and then have that one ready. If I come to the move tool, you can move it to wherever you want. You can change the opacity. Same goes for, let's say, this one here. Again, most people would lower the opacity down a bit so you can still see the image behind, but also people won't be able to sort of really find a way of getting rid of that in Affinity Photo or Photoshop. So basically that's it really. You can either set up a macro with all different signatures or copyright messages like I've done here, or you can just set up a macro with just one item pasted in. And then every time you load in a picture, you just need to open your library and then click on the macro that you want. So that is everything, I think. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.